In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to customize walls. Let's just say I'm going to extend this wall to here, and I'm going to create another wall in through here, just for argument's sake, and trim these together. You can see the dimension automatically moved, which is great. Just move these dimensions up and out of the way. So let's say I want to create a custom wall in through here. I can click on this wall and I can change this wall to another type of wall. But if I want to make my own type of wall, I click on the wall and then I hit this button called Edit Type. The Edit Type button is going to show me all the parameters for the wall. Click Duplicate and now Revit asks for a unique name for the new type of wall. Name the new wall Revit Course Wall and click OK. Now click Edit Structure and Revit loads another dialog box. This dialog box is showing Plan View of the wall. It's showing the wall function and then core boundary and then the structure and then another core boundary. The core boundary is where you want to take your dimensions from. So if I had a timber wall and you had a plaster wall on one side, a stud, and then plaster, you wouldn't dimension from the plaster, you'd dimension from the stud because that's the structural element inside of the wall. So the core boundary allows you to differentiate between the elements, so you can choose between dimensioning from the finish face of the wall or the structure. Now let's create a wall. I'm going to insert a few more layers into the wall. Then I move them into the correct position, so I'm going to move the elements outside of this core boundary. I've got one layer inside of my core boundary and then a few more layers above this. Next, I'll start assigning materials and thicknesses to all the elements. So I'm going to click on my brick wall, and you can see I've got a material set up now for a masonry brick wall. I want to change that to a timber stud, so I'm going to type in timber at the top, and Revit is going to show me an option for timber. It's really important in Revit that you are specific with naming materials. If you create a timber stud or a timber floorboard, naming the material simply timber will not suffice. Name the material exactly what it is. If you are creating a timber stud, you must create a unique material called timber stud. To do that, right-click Duplicate and rename the material timber stud. Click OK, then add a thickness of 90 millimeters. Now I'll set up the next material. Finishes can only be applied on the wall faces, so anything that's not a finish or a structural element will be a substrate. I'm going to create another material and I'm going to type in plywood. That's not going to be any plywood, so I'm going to type in timber and right-click Duplicate, name the material plywood. The material disappeared because the search is set the timber, but if I type plywood, you can now see the material. I click OK and give the material 7 millimeters thickness. Next, I want an air gap, so I'm going to click on Thermal Air and so type 20 millimeters. To create a finish, so I'm going to select Finish and I'm going to click on my materials and I select Fiber Cement Sheet. It doesn't exist, so again I'm going to find something similar, concrete, duplicate that, call that cement sheet, click OK. And I'm going to set a thickness of 7 millimeters. Now I want to do one more layer for the interior. Oops, I'm just going to delete those layers, click 2 layers and move that down, and I can say Finish over here. This one should also be set to Finish, and I might set this one to be plasterboard. Type gypsum for plaster, and we've got gypsum wallboard. I'm going to duplicate that. I need to be specific in naming materials, so I'll call this fiber-rated plasterboard. Click OK and then give 16 millimeters. Now click OK, and I've created a unique custom wall. I need to make sure that these little icons are in the external position.